Hello, crafting friends. I'm Doreen Hasibas from It Begins with Ink and Paper, and welcome to Simply Stamping Sunday. I'm just moving things to make sure you can see the screen okay. It is Sunday, June 8th. So welcome. Boy, it's been a busy weekend here for me. That is for sure. As I said, Friday night, I'd been in Boston all night, driving home in that torrential rain. And then yesterday was our big event for the New Hampshire Excellence in Education, which I'm on the board. And we had our big event honoring the Schools of the Year, Teachers of the Year. So it was a very long day, but it was a very fulfilling day. It's really nice to have the opportunity to be able to honor teachers in the state of New Hampshire and fellow educators, school boards, superintendents, administrators. So it was a fun day. But boy, today I was exhausted. So this is week 2 of the Pretty Florals set. Tonight we're going to just focus on this stamp, and we're going to look at some things that we can do with this stamp and make 3 very unique cards with different color palettes, but using the same stamp. And we'll also use this and this stamp. And I'm also using from the Sweet Blooms, which is the second stamp set in the Sweet. And it's You Make Me Smile is the one I'm going to be using. So I want to remind you that Stamping Up for the month of June, they have never had a sale like this in the 26 years I've been a demonstrator, where if you buy one suite, you get the second suite at 50% off. You also can buy any suite item and then buy a second one and get 50% off that. So it is a pretty good deal. Hi Lynn, thanks for joining. So our first card tonight, we are going to be making a card with the Strawberry Slush cardstock, and this is the card that we're going to be using. It's so pretty. You've heard me say a million times already how in love I am with the Strawberry Slush. So the measurements for the cardstock that we're using, the Strawberry Slush is 5.5 by 8.5. The basic white, I'm using 4 different pieces. Let me make sure I'm getting this in because I'm just showing the top part. Let me just move it down a little bit. I want you to be able to see the whole thing. There we go. That's a little better. For basic white, we're using 1 sheet of 4 by 5 1/4, 1 by 4, 3 by 4 1/4, and 3 3/4 by 5. And then for the Designer Series paper, our big piece is 3 3/4 by 5 inches, and then we're using a tiny one for the inside. That's 1/2 inch by 3 3/4, 3/4 of an inch. Okay. Let's get started. All right, let me just turn this over. It's my cheat sheet, but we need to have something to stamp off on. Okay, so let's start by just folding this piece of cardstock in half. There we go. And on the front, we are going to be mounting the Designer Series paper right on top of the basic white. So let me get my snail out. And in the hopes of not getting adhesive anywhere, we'll grab my silicone mat as well. There we go. This is the Strawberry Slush design, and we'll add some adhesive to the back of this, and we'll put this on the front of the card. There we go. Now for the inside of our card, we're going to take our smaller piece of designer series paper and the smaller piece of our basic white, and we're just going to add that to the bottom of the bottom of the piece of paper, excuse me. And we're going to just put this on the inside of the card. So that gets us to, now we just need to stamp. There we go. So I'm going to set this aside and move that silicone mat. And I'm going to start by using my Old Olive. It is definitely my favorite green. And I am going to be just putting some ink. Make sure I'm covering the whole stamp. And I am just going to stamp this a little bit in the middle of the paper. There we go. I'll just put that down. I don't need this any longer, so we just need the strawberry slush. So first I'm going to stamp my greeting, and I'm using from the pattern of friendship, "You bring so much joy and laughter to my life." And so I'm just going to get that inked up, make sure it's all inked up, and then I'm just going to stamp this right in the center. There we go. And we're done with that stamp. Okay, so now we'll set that aside and we'll start stamping our flowers. So I'm going to start with the inside piece, and again I'm just going to add the color, stamp off, and then stamp on. I like this base for the flowers because it kind of puts the flowers going in all different directions. There we go. And then we just need the outside. And we'll add that. And I'll tell you, this is one of the easiest stamps I've ever used to line up two-step stamping. Okay, we're all done there. So this is going to go on to the front of the card. Let me just close that ink pad, because I know how easy it is to get my hands right in the ink. I do it all the time. So this is just going to go on the center of the front of the card. Just like that. And then this piece is going to go over it. I am only, because it adds a little bit of layering, I'm just going to put this, the adhesive in the middle. I want some of the white to show down here. And so I am just going to make sure that is centered, and that is the end of our first card. So simple, so easy, and it's just such a pretty and bright card. We'll set that one aside, and let's go on with our next one. So for this next one, I'm going to go to last year's in colors. So we're going to use some Pretty in Pink, and I'm going to be using some of the Peach Pie, and I'm also going to use some Old Olive Cardstock, and this is what we're going to make. Isn't that pretty? All right, so let's set this one aside and get started. So I am going to be stamping on my inside piece and this piece here and my greeting piece. So we can just start putting this together otherwise. So I'm going to grab my bone folder and we're going to just make sure that is nicely burnished. And again, I'm going to go back to my silicone mat for the adhesive. I want to center this on the piece of paper, the front of the card, just from the top and the bottom because it's as wide as the card is. So I just want to make sure the top and the bottom are even as I put that on, just like that. Now this piece of paper doesn't come from the floral paper. It comes from the celebratory sips paper, but it has some of both last year's and this year's in colors, and I just thought it fit perfect with this card. So there we go with that. Now let's move all this out of the way, and I'm going to start with stamping the flower on the inside of my card. And I need to wash it from the last card, so I just put some water on my stamp, and I'm just wiping it off on a paper towel with some, I put some water not on a stamp, I put it on a paper towel, and I'm just wiping it off the paper towel. So this one we're going to be using the single stamp. So for the inside of the card, I am just going to stamp the stem in Old Olive, and then I'm going to stamp the base in Pretty in Pink, and then I'm going to stamp this over it. There we go. So the inside is ready to go on the inside of the card. So let's just do that and get that out of the way. Oops, wrong, picked up the wrong one. That was the one that I had already made. All right, so we'll put this right in the inside of the card, and that is all ready to be put together. Okay, so next we're going to be stamping our both our greeting and our stems, and both of these get stamped in the Old Olive, so I brought both of them out. Now I'm using from Textured Notes, You Are Seriously the Best. And I want this in, and I just want to make sure, gotta just make sure it was even. And I want this over on the right side. There we go. So the greeting is down, so we can set that aside. And now I'm going to be stamping all of my my plant piece. So I'm going to be mixing and matching the heights and the directions a bit of how I'm going. And in the end, I wanted a total of 7 stems, and that's what I've got. Okay, so now we're going to be starting with the pink, because that's what we just ended with. And we'll be, again, stamping off and then stamping on. It's very light. And I am going to be alternating my pink. There we go. And now take the solid image and do the same thing. Except no stamping off. There we go. I am going to clean those off because they're going to go into my peach pie. So, doing the same thing, I'm going to stamp on, stamp off, whoops, and stamp off again, and then stamp on. And it's okay if my flowers overlap a little bit. There we go. And now because I want this to just look like a nice bunch of flowers. And I think that's good. And then this piece is just going to go right along the bottom piece. So I'm just going to add some adhesive. And just line that up. So that's what the front piece is going to look like. And then we're going to attach it onto the piece of old olive. And just center that on. And I'm just realizing I don't think I told you any of the dimensions of this card. So let me turn this back over. So for this card, we're using a 5.5 by 8.5 piece of Pretty and Pink cardstock, 2 3/4 by 5 for the old olive. The white, I have a 4 by 5 1/4 for the inside, 2.5 by 4 3/4 for here, and then 3/4 by 4 3/4 for the greeting. And then this floral in bloom design, the celebratory sips designer series paper is 3 3/4 by 5.5. All right, so let's get this on the front and we'll have our second card all done. So even when you just want to use the same stamp, you can create some very unique and beautiful cards. So there is card number 2. And let's go to card number 3. And it wouldn't be using the in colors unless I used some of that Secret Sky and the cloud cover. I love this card and I love this color combination. So this is the next card we're going to make. And the dimensions for all of the cardstock that we're going to be using. The cloud cover cardstock measures 5.5 by 8.5. Pick up that paper I just dropped. The Secret C is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and 2 5/8 by 3 7/8. Basic white, we have a piece inside that is 4 by 5 1/4, 2.5 by 3 3/4 here, 1 by 4 here. We're going to trim it after we stamp. And then the designer series paper is 4 by 5 1/4. And I have 2 pieces with 2 different designs that measure 3/4 inches by 4 inches. Okay, so let's get started for this one. So let's just start putting everything together, and then we'll save what we're doing for the stamping. So we're going to use our bone folder to burnish this edge nicely. There we go. And the piece of designer series paper is going to go onto the piece of the secret C. It's just an 1/8 of an inch difference, so there's just a little tiny border, and this is going to go onto the front of the card. And it will just be about an 1/8 of an inch different as well. So there's the front of the card. Just that alone is beautiful. Thank you for your kind words, Lynn. I appreciate it. This piece is going to go onto the inside panel of our card, and so I'm just going to put it at the bottom of the page. I like doing this. I either like to stamp, oh, that is so crooked. I either like to stamp on the inside part of the images, or I like to use the designer series paper. It just ties the inside of the card to the outside of the card, and I really like that. But I also like it to be nice and even. So let's try this again. Much better. And then we're going to put this on the inside of the card. And then we're ready to start stamping. All right, so let's get going on the stamping. Turn this over again, put this out of the way, and tonight I'm going to show you how I put this together for the cloud cover. So I have this piece is going to go over here, this piece is going to go over here, because we're only going to be stamping on these two pieces. So, because it is Granny Apple Green in the designer series paper, I'm going to use Granny Apple Green here. And I am using that. I'm going to just clean my stamps real quick. There we go. And I am going to start by stamping one in the middle, and it's going to be lower than the other two. So there's my first one. This one's going to go up a little higher, and this one is going to go up a little higher. There we go. Done with Garden Green. Now, when I took one of our uninked mini ink pads, and you have the cloud cover refill, and I just filled the refill with the cloud cover ink, and Stampin' Up! Has said this is the best way to get the true color for the cloud cover. So I wanted to try that. So I'm going to ink that up. And for this one, I'm going to stamp it full strength. This is a pretty light ink compared to the soft C. Secret C. I keep wanting to call it soft C, but it's Secret C. And the Secret C looks great over the full thing. There we go. Looks really watercolored with this because I put a little too much ink in, which is fine. It still works, but I need to take a little bit more of it off. Okay, so now we're going to just go over the top with our Secret C. And then I'm going to be stamping the greeting. in Secrecy as well. I love the font on this stamp. It's just cool. I love cursive fonts anyway. There we go. All right. Let's put this ink out of the way. Okay, now we're ready to start putting this all together with the card. So what I did was I used my paper cutter to trim this off. I'm going to trim both of the pieces, but I'm going to trim this with my cutter and just cut it to about the edge of the stamp. It just makes it a much easier way to center the stamp. Sorry, my nose is running, so I just had to grab a tissue. Then what I'm going to do is place this on this and then cut a little bit of this away. It doesn't have to be perfectly even because, like I said, I'm going to be cutting part of it away. Because if I leave it on, and I'll show you what I mean, if I leave it on, it's going to go all the way across, which is fine. I had it go just partially across. I mean, we could do both. We could have it all the way across as well, but I am going to trim it a little bit. So I'm just going to grab my paper snips and just cut it off so there's about 1.5 little bars showing. So now it's not going to go all the way across, which I think I like it better that way. So I'm going to add some adhesive. I'm being daring, not using my, again, this is just 1/8 of an inch. So you're just going to have a tiny little border. And I am going to put this up on dimensionals. So this piece is going to go just on this across the front. I want to cover. I don't want to see any of the end of the stem, so I have plenty of room to cover that. So I'm just going to add some adhesive right here. Just like this to have it even on both sides. And then I'm going to grab my dimensionals and we're going to put those on. So I'm going to start by putting one on each end so that piece doesn't get squished. And then I'm just going to go into my corners, one in the middle, and my upper corners. There we are. Get these off. And look how quick we got our cards done tonight. Just about a half hour. Okay, move that out of the way. And we're just going to center this top and bottom, side to side. And here is our last beautiful card. So let's take a look at what we've done. I'm just going to get some of these scraps off of the table. So our first card tonight was our strawberry Slush card. Our third card was the soft secret. I just want to call it soft. Secret C. And then our third one used last year's in colors Pretty in Pink and Peach Pie. So I thank you, Lynn. So thank you for joining me tonight on the live or on the replay or on my YouTube channel. I appreciate you, and I hope you enjoyed tonight's presentation. I will see you Friday night at 7 o'clock for another edition of Simply Stamping Sunday. And of course, we'll be back next week for week 3 of the Pretty Florals. Have a good night, everyone, and a great week. Good night.